energy and how that affects our standard of living. It's a very important topic for us. In all human history, this is the first generation where we have a challenge that we've never had before. What kind of challenges have we had in human history? Let's go back hundreds of years. Back as far back in time as we can go. What was the number one challenge for humanity, just as a species? What was our number one challenge for all human history?
Survival.
It was always survival. It was always survival. I mean, look, let's just look at recent history. A little over 100 years ago, let's think 1906. What was the number one killer of Americans? Number one cause of death. Well, okay, can you be a little more specific? Disease is always up there.
Aging.
It wasn't aging. What was the number one killer? What disease was the number one killer?
Oh, disease. I'm sorry.
Influenza. The flu. Now, how many of you wake up and you're deathly afraid that the flu's going to get you tomorrow? I mean, seriously, if you wake up, oh my goodness, I hope I don't get the flu today, that's going to be it for me. I mean, none of you, right? Number two is pneumonia. Number three is tuberculosis. How many people here are deathly afraid that tomorrow you're going to wake up with tuberculosis and die? How many of you are afraid that you're going to wake up with polio tomorrow and you're going to be crippled for the rest of your life? Well, okay, so you guys aren't afraid of any of that. If you go back through all human history, those kinds of things, those kind of fears, were the greatest threat to our survival. It was getting sick, it was lifespans were short. There's a lot of places today, a lot of countries that are undeveloped where lifespans are in the 30s, early 40s. That's it. That was your life expectancy. I'd be beyond my years in some of these countries. I'm like, holy smokes, I don't feel old yet. But in all human history, I mean, there have been times where life expectancy was in the 30s for the planet, average. Survival was the big deal. Now, this is the first generation where it's not about survival. We have conquered most of the diseases out there. Smallpox doesn't even exist anymore except in a petri dish. We have eradicated a lot of diseases, and the other ones we have controlled pretty darn well. Doesn't mean there's not going to be a pandemic someday, something new is going to crop up, etc. But we have largely conquered survival. And now what we're talking about is sustaining a very high quality of life that's never been seen before. That's really the challenge of our generation. It's never happened before in human history. Where we're looking at sustainability, sustaining our quality of life rather than just surviving. And it's hard for us to imagine that because, as I'll talk about, we have it so good. I mean, we have it really, really good. So let me talk about our standard of living because this is key. Most of the energy that we use, petroleum, coal, and natural gas. That is most of the energy we use. In the United States, in Michigan, worldwide, you take any segment out there, very few places don't use mostly these resources. But imagine a world where these didn't exist. So we don't have any petroleum, we don't have any coal, and we don't have any natural gas. What kind of world would this be? It's the world has been for all human history, except for recent history. I mean, these are recent discoveries as far as that goes. What would we have to do? If you want to live just the way you do right now, without those resources, I still want electricity, I still want to run the lights, I want to charge my iPad, my iPhone, my computer. I still want all the electricity that I use. And I want heat, but there's no natural gas. And I still want to drive a car, come over here on a bus, hour and a half drive, but there's no petroleum. Where would we have to get all that energy? We've got to get it somehow, right? If you want to maintain your standard of living, your quality of life, we want to use the same amount of energy, but there's no fossil fuels. So how do we generate that? How do people used to get things done? Especially people with some money, some coin in their pocket. What did they do? They didn't have electricity, they didn't have coal, they didn't have natural gas. How did they get their stuff done? How did they get their dishes cleaned? How did they get their clothes washed? How did they travel? Oh, come on, history. You guys have been studying history some, a little bit here and there, right? How do people do that, especially wealthy people?
They made other people.
They hired other people, right?
Or enslave them sometimes.
Enslaved them sometimes,
Sorry.
but throughout history, hiring other people to do that kind of stuff, historically, that's been common. When you go back as far back as you can, that's been very common. So what would our standard of living be like if we didn't have these? Let me just give you an ESPN commercial that kind of encapsulated what we'd have to do. If I click on it. Can't hear it too well, but this is the ESPN offices, and all of a sudden they're working late at night and the power goes down. Well, what the heck happened? So this guy goes back through the basement, and he goes back to the electrical power room, high voltage, and Lance Armstrong is sitting right there. Greatest biker in the world. He powers up the generator. Hey, sorry, thought everybody left for the night. Right? That's how it would be. You'd have to hire somebody. If you want electricity, you'd have to hire people to ride bikes. Now look, no person on the planet can power a whole building. I'll tell you that right now. This is a funny commercial. That's why I like to use it. Because that is what we'd have to do. It wouldn't be Lance Armstrong. It would be an army of people powering up ESPN headquarters. But anyway, so if you're going to hire laborers, let's say, that's what we're talking about, hiring laborers to do stuff for you that electricity does right now, that natural gas does right now, coal does for you right now, petroleum does for you right now. How much work can a good laborer produce? Like, if you're going to go out there on the market and hire somebody, you know what a horsepower is, right? We're all familiar with horsepower. Cars are rated in horsepower. How much horsepower can a good laborer produce? If you're going to hire somebody, one of the things you're going to ask is, how much work can you produce, right? So you're out there on the market, you go on monster.com or wherever, you read resumes of good laborers looking for places to work. And first thing you ask them, how much work can you produce? Right? You want to know that from labor, right?